Hi everyone, this is Natalie with Champion of Coins Tarot. I hope that you all are doing very well and having a wonderful day. I wanted to come on to have just like a bit of a chat and to share the decks that I've been working with during spring 2022, to share the high points, to share the mid points, and one low point that I've had, and also just to give some insight and transparency around my way of working through my tarot deck collection. So I have a lot of tarot and oracle titles, and in order to make sure that I am getting the most use out of my collection, I assign myself a random tarot or oracle deck for every single week of the year using a random dice generator. And I've been doing this for the past 3 years, mostly with a lot of success. It really has made sure that I am getting a lot of use out of my collection, that nothing is sitting and collecting dust. It constantly keeps me feeling fresh and inspired because I have so many titles to work with and just so much beauty and art and symbolism directly at my fingertips. It's just brought a lot of joy to work through my collection in that way. That being said, there is a downside to this, and that is, while it's allowed me to explore the full breadth of my collection, limiting myself to just 7 days at a time is not always conducive, especially when working with more complex tarot and oracle systems like the Thoth-based decks in my collection, for example. It really just is not enough time to truly go deep and to get to know a particular system inside and out. And I find myself, while doing these exercises recently, really just connecting with decks that I already have a deeply established relationship with, and not giving myself the full space necessary to really master or really kind of build new relationships. So I'm going to kind of walk through several examples of that just from over the last few weeks. Let me know if you have similar experience in your workings, and if any of what I'm about to speak about resonates. And of course, if there is anything that you would like me to talk about in more detail, do let me know, because I have just, some review videos that are percolating as a result of this process, and would just love to be able to kind of go forward and to continue filming, especially this summer. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I thought when I came back to YouTube that I would have much more time to film, and the last few months have just been non-stop, personally and professionally. I work in the Jewish religious world, and we had 2 major holidays, Purim and then Passover, that just required a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of intention to get ready for my community. And I didn't end up having a lot of time to be able to pursue projects outside of my work life. So I'm hoping that now that the holiday season has passed and that have a few months of rest and relaxation, to really take full advantage of that and to be able to work on filming this for you guys. So again, let me know if there's anything that you would like me to explore in more depth or in more detail. So the first category of decks that I worked with this spring are the tried and true favorites. These are the ones that just make my heart sing, and working with them in this very kind of structured and intentional way just reminded me all of the more of why I love them and why I just keep coming back to them over and over again. And this probably isn't going to come as a surprise to anyone, but the first title is the Tarot of the Magical Forest. This is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. It is the first Rider-Waite-Smith clone that I got along my tarot journey 7 or 8 years ago now, and I just love it so much. There's something about the art style, there's something about just the richness of these characters that suspends disbelief and allows me to interact with the symbols and just with the messages of the cards in a very immediate and intuitive way that I don't always have. As much as I love the Rider-Waite-Smith, and like that's the deck that I work with every single day nonstop, like in all of its forms, print, digital, mini, full size, you name it. Like there's something so special about going to the Tarot of the Magical Forest for personal readings. It's really, really great. And I love this one so, so much. Another animal-based deck that I absolutely adore is the Animalis Os Fortuna Tarot. So this is an independently created deck. It just is another beautiful exploration of the animal world, but this one has so much more depth and so much more realism to it. And there's an incredible blend of lightness and darkness. There are skeletons, there's death and decay. There are some cards that are more violent or that are a bit more provocative. And it's just because the natural world can sometimes be violent and can sometimes be provocative. But this is another one where it just speaks to me on such a deep level. You still have the traditional tarot symbolism, but there's a lot of depth and detail. And I've also been doing some work with the book Animal Speak and kind of going into different mythologies or different associations that various cultures have with these animals. I think that the artist did a really good job of kind of capturing a global perspective in here. And it's been really wonderful to kind of take this and go deeper and just study more and more in depth with it beyond kind of the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith structure. So that's Animalis Os Fortuna. Love, love, love. Another one that I've really been loving is the Prisma Visions. This is the Kickstarter edition from 2020. And that's also where I got this amazing tarot cloth from, was that Kickstarter. This deck is just absolutely fantastic. It's another one that just immediately speaks to me. I feel so comfortable. There's just something that's so beautiful and poetic about the images, but also very familiar. And I really, really enjoy the guidebook, both the small one that comes with the original deck and the larger Kickstarter guidebook that James Eads created. It's just really, really fantastic, and one that I definitely am going to keep out and play with all of the time. I just love it so much. And then the last one of just truly spectacular favorite decks is the Thelema Tarot. And I have to say, this is the one that I've used the most. It has definitely gone way beyond just 7 days. This is definitely my most used tarot deck this spring. It is a collage deck. It's digital artwork, but I think it's done in a really, really beautiful way. This is another one that feels very fantastical. I think that just the backgrounds, the lighting, it feels dreamy and ethereal, but so incredibly cohesive. And this is one that speaks to me both in terms of the immediacy of the situation that I'm in, but also on a very rich archetypal level. And there's a lot of just visionary and creative work that I really love to do with this deck. And it's fantastic. And I absolutely am planning on doing a full review of this. I think that, again, even though this is another one that is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, there is a lot of detail. And there's just something about the composition of the images and kind of this dreamscape that, like, every single piece is there for a reason. Like, every single piece either relates back to or builds upon the traditional symbolism. So I'm definitely planning on doing like a full detailed walkthrough and kind of guide to this deck. Absolutely love the Lima Tarot. Now, some decks that I really, these are like not my favorite decks ever, and I definitely need to spend a lot more time working with them, but these are ones that really stood out to me and kind of captured my imagination and captured my curiosity. The first one is the Celestial Tarot, and these are the backs. Celestial Tarot is very much a astrology based deck. It's inspired by constellations. There is Kabbalistic symbolism overlaid, there's planetary symbolism overlaid, and each card is related to a Greek myth. And this one is amazing for shadow work. Like, this just absolutely gets to the heart of whatever issue I'm going through at the time, and really helps me to unravel just layers of just psychology and conditioning, and helps me to analyze from a really loving place and a really healing place kind of why I am the way that I am. And it helps me to kind of mythologize my own life in a very powerful and just like a very powerful, empowered way. So this is one that I definitely need a lot more time with. Been relying on the guidebook a lot, and I really wish that I had like the big print version that the first editions of this deck used to come with from US Game System, but just the little white book and kind of the descriptions in there are really amazing jumping off points. And just the artwork itself, like all the majors are inspired, of course, by like the zodiac itself, kind of the main constellations and the main mythology that we are most immediately familiar with. But then it also has the traditional tarot card symbol in the background. So here we have Virgo, we have the depiction of the maiden and that entire archetypal journey, but then you also have that related to kind of the inner journey and almost like the inner fertility of the Hermit card. So love it, absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to circle back and to spend much more time with it. And then I feel the same way about the Dust II Onyx Tarot. I have the travel size edition, and I apologize, I'm trying my very best not to bump the camera, but you know, it's happening. So this deck is so beautiful and so rich, and also incredibly empowering. And one thing is that the travel size edition does not come with the full guidebook. And so I ended up getting the PDF version of the guidebook, and I'm going to absolutely have to print it or to figure out a way to bind it on my own, because I just want to take notes. The artist is amazing, and she has used like the facial features, like this is the Emperor Grace Jones. Like, she's taken inspiration from real celebrities and real activists and leaders in the Black community and applied them to tarot in a way that is very, very incredibly powerful. And she goes into the stories of their life. She goes into their birth charts and ties in some of the astrological symbolism to these people. And it's just amazing. So this is one that just reading it on its own is incredibly rich and detailed and provides a lot of food for thought. But it makes me want to do even more research and to, again, take notes, sit with it, really live in this world that she's created. So that's Dust to Onyx, another one that I'm going to need to circle back to. And then there are also two decks that I've worked with that I need to circle back to, but it's because instead of deepening my relationship or like falling more in love with them, I found myself falling out of love, and this is so painful to me, and I don't want to give up, because both of these decks in their own way have been a very important part of my practice for the last few years. And I don't know if I was just not in the right space to be able to appreciate them, or I don't know. I feel like the issue is me and not with them, but we'll see. So one of them is the Tarot of Mermaids from Los Scarabeo. Like, at one point, this was my most used tarot deck. Just this was so rich and so healing for me at a particular point in my life, like 3 or 4 years ago. Oh my God, even longer than that, because it would have been 2018. Yeah, like from 2018, this was a staple in my collection, and it helped me to go so deep in so many different ways and in so many aspects of my life. It was a true all-around reader. And the week that I worked with this back in March, it just didn't do anything for me. It felt flat. It felt like all of the cards were the same, even though there is a lot of movement and there's a lot of, like all of the suits kind of have their own color and kind of have their own elemental correspondence going on, even though it's very watery. It just felt like every card that I was getting was the same, and the messages weren't coming through in the way that they used to. But I don't want to give up. I want to give this some space and give this some time and come back to it. I'm not ready to let go just yet, because this is, out of all the mermaid decks out there, like this is the one for me. So it's kind of this or nothing in terms of mermaid themed decks and artwork in my collection. And then the other one is the Sacred Rose Tarot. And I don't actually have the same level of fondness on an emotional level with this deck as I do with Tarot of Mermaids, but this is just a great all-around reader for me. Like, this is one that, especially in 2020 and 2021, I used a lot for myself, and I used for my roommate at the time, and it just spoke in a very poetic way, in a very immediate way. It worked. And this is another one where I just didn't feel anything, didn't feel inspired, didn't feel like I had a lot to say, or like I was getting a lot of insight out of the time with the deck. And again, I don't know if I was just having an off week, but it just felt like the connection that I had and just the way that I normally would feel about this deck, just like it just wasn't happening. But I also do not want to give up because I just want to push through. I want to push through. And now we're coming to the deck that I don't want to push through for anymore, and that I think is very probably going to be leaving my collection this year. And I feel a sense of relief, but I also feel a sense of guilt about this, because this is a deck that so many people love, and I really, really was excited to do deeper work with it this year. It didn't happen, and that is the Muse Tarot by Chris Ann. Now, you guys, objectively, this is a beautiful deck. It is modern. It has a great feminine energy. Like, it's just beautiful, right? Like, the art is arresting, it's colorful, it's bold, it's empowering. I just didn't like it. This is another one where it all just felt the same to me. And I read through the entire guidebook and I took notes, and the guidebook, like, it didn't feel like it had any depth. It didn't feel like it added to my understanding of tarot. I didn't feel like I had any insight into the symbols that the artist chose. Really, like, every single message for the card was about, like, oh, step into your personal power, which is a great message. But, like, for me, that's not how I read tarot. Like, not every single card is going to be affirming in that way, or like not every single card is going to be affirming in the exact same way as every other card. Like, it just didn't work for me. And then when I was comparing this with decks that have similar artwork and that have similar themes of like femininity and empowerment, like Serpent Fire and She-Wolf Tarot, you guys, like, which are very similar. Like, you have like these beautiful pictures of desert priestesses, like reconnecting with their radical divinity or whatever. Like, it just, there's a lack of depth for me. And I tried to make it work. I tried so hard. And I still respect this creator so much, but like, this is, I don't. That's all I have to say, is like, I don't feel like this particular deck is serving me or has a place in my collection. So I will very likely be passing that along sooner rather than later. But other than that, I mean, even, it was challenging, I think, in a good way. And I think it's important not to try to hold on to or try to force relationship with a deck or with items that you have in your collection all of the time. Like, sometimes it's okay to just let it go and to pass things along to people who are going to be able to appreciate and connect with them in a much deeper way than you are able to. So that was my experience there. Then that was the point in which I kind of realized the futility of what I was doing to a certain extent, of realizing that I wasn't getting enough time with decks that I really wanted to sit down and to study with, and that also I was forcing myself to kind of power through with like 3 decks in a row that I just didn't resonate with and that didn't spark joy for me. And so I decided to change the way in which I have approached my collection and to really focus on doing an intentional depth study, to kind of take a step back from this weekly work and to lean into a deeper practice. And the way in which I've been doing that is through an exercise called counting the Omer. So for those of you who don't know, the Omer is the 50-day period in between the second night of Passover and another holiday called Shavuot. Shavuot represents the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, kind of that transformative moment of revelation where this relationship was really solidified between God and between the Jewish people in the Torah through the giving of the Torah. So traditionally in antiquity, this 50-day period was marked by daily grain offerings that were made at the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The Second Temple no longer exists and has not existed for the better part of 2,000 years. And so instead, it has evolved into a daily meditative contemplative practice where each day is associated with a different sphera on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So what I've been doing is I have been counting the Omer with tarot and with oracle. And I'm going to show you the 2 decks that I have devoted this practice to. At the time of filming this, we're 26 days into the Omer, so halfway through. It's been really, really exciting, and as someone with ADHD, I'm very proud of myself for making it through this challenge so far. But one of them is actually an oracle deck that has been made specifically for this practice, and this is the Omer Oracle by Nomi Lamb and Taya Ma Sher, both of whom are Kohanet, or Hebrew priestesses. Talked a little bit about this in my deck collection videos that I uploaded in February. But the Hebrew Priestess Institute is an alternative path to spiritual leadership for Jewish women that exists outside of the traditional rabbinical school system. I am not a Kohenet. I am not a Kohenet in training. I am just a community member who has benefited in countless ways from their online community and from now their oracle decks that they have been releasing year over year. So this one is intended specifically to help you count the Omer. So you go through 50 cards, one every single day. You have the Sphira that you are working with on the top, keywords explaining, like, so for example, Chesed is the fourth Sphira on the Tree of Life, and it represents loving kindness, or in this deck, they describe it as heart expansion. Basically, it's the divine quality of openness and generosity and freedom, like that divine desire within creation to expand. And every single day, as you work through the system, you are inspired to see the ways in which the 10 Sphirot operate within you and how those divine principles operate within you. So I put it back in order for the purpose of this video. The first week is dedicated to Chesed and to looking at the different layers of loving kindness. The next week goes into Gvura, which is the next Sphirot, and looks at all of the ways in which Gvura, or in this case, it's talking strongholding. So Gvura is kind of the counterpart of restriction and boundary setting and protection and safety, kind of that counterbalance to wild expansion. And again, like looking at how those divine energies play out within you and within your psyche and within your life. In addition to that, there's also a fantastic book about counting the Omer through tarot by Mark Horn. It's called Tarot and the Gates of Light, and it goes through the entire 50-day process using the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot system. And I have been using those journaling exercises that Mark Horn recommends with the Navigator's Tarot of the Mystic Sea, which is kind of a Rider-Waite-Smith Thoth clone that just is so beautiful and so expansive, and I've wanted to do a deep card-by-card study of this deck for a very long time, and this seems like the perfect opportunity to do it because, again, it came up in the decks that I had already assigned myself to work with for the year. This deck has a lot of Kabbalistic symbolism and a lot of color symbolism to it, and I've been working through one suit at a time, using, kind of pairing it with the daily draw from the Omer Oracle, and then doing the journaling exercise from Mark Horn's book, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm just so, let's see here, like, I'm just so incredibly happy to be at a place where my Jewish journey and my tarot journey are kind of melding and colliding together. Because up until this point, I've tried to very deliberately keep my studies separate from one another. And now I'm at a place where I just want to integrate that so deeply into my life, and to be able to bring all of the lessons and all of the lived experience that I have had so far to my tarot practice. And so that's kind of the big takeaway and the big shift for me right now in terms of how I'm working with my collection is, number one, to focus on doing a longer, this is like 2 months and some change, practice with one particular tarot system. And then number two, to go beyond the surface of just doing daily draws for myself and to really work with a much more depth-focused exercise for myself. And I am going to be doing a longer video about my experience counting the Omer with tarot and my review of Tarot and the Gates of Light once I have completed this entire process. But I will say that it has opened up so many doors of expansion and doors of perception for me that I'm very grateful for. And I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to shape up going into summer. I think I am still going to try to work with a different deck every single week, but instead of making that the main focus of how I am working with tarot, I am, again, going to allow myself to go on longer adventures and to sit and work with imagery as I feel called to do so, instead of putting pressure on myself to try to go through as many different experiences at once. I think it's going to make me much happier, and I think it's going to make me a much more well-rounded and better reader and a much more centered and grounded individual. So that is kind of the look at all of the decks that I've been working with in the spring and how I try to get a lot of utility out of my collection. Let me know if any of these titles resonate with you. Let me know if you have had similar experiences working with your decks, or if you have any advice for someone who is in my situation and is changing my approach right now. I would really, really appreciate it. As always, I hope you are well. I am sending you much love, no matter where you are in the world, and I look forward to speaking with you very, very soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.